I should have known something was wrong when Jake insisted we host Thanksgiving at our house this year. In 5 years of marriage, we'd always gone to his mother's place in Vermont. Always. But this year, he'd been adamant. "It's time we start our own traditions," he'd said, kissing my forehead. "Plus, Mom and Richard are dying to see the house since we renovated." Richard was Jake's stepfather, a quiet, reserved man who'd married Jake's mother, Helen. 3 years ago, after Jake's father passed, I'd met him maybe a dozen times. He seemed nice enough, if a bit awkward. The kind of man who'd rather fade into the background than draw attention to himself. So, I'd agreed. I took 3 days off work, bought a 20-pound turkey, and spent Tuesday night preparing side dishes. Jake had Wednesday off, so he promised to handle the deep cleaning and set up the guest room. That Wednesday morning, I left for work at 7. Jake was still in bed, promising he'd get everything done. "Go," he'd mumbled, pulling the covers over his head. "I've got this. You worry too much." I believed him. I shouldn't have. When I walked through the door at 6:30 that evening, exhausted and ready to collapse on the couch, I found Richard sitting alone in our living room. He stood up quickly when he heard me, looking uncomfortable in khaki pants and a sweater that seemed too formal for just sitting around. "Oh, hello," I said, surprised. "I didn't know you'd arrived already. Where's Jake? And Helen?" Richard's expression was strange, something between apologetic and embarrassed. "Your husband left about an hour ago. Helen's still in Vermont. She's not coming." I set down my purse slowly. "I'm sorry." "What?" "Jake got a call. Some emergency with his friend Travis. He said he had to leave immediately and would be back tonight." Richard shifted his weight. "He told me you'd be home soon and that I should wait here." My mind was spinning. Travis lived 2 states away. An emergency that required Jake to drive 4 hours there and 4 hours back. On the night before Thanksgiving, did he say what kind of emergency? No, he seemed stressed. He left in a hurry. I pulled out my phone. 3 missed calls from Jake, all from around noon. 2 texts: "Travis needs me. Emergency. Be back late tonight." And then, 2 hours later, "Mom can't make it either. Richard's already there. So sorry, babe." I stared at the messages, trying to make sense of this. I don't understand. Why did Richard come if Helen wasn't coming? Richard cleared his throat. "I was already on the road when Helen called to say she wasn't feeling well. She told me to turn around, but I was nearly here. And Jake insisted I should come anyway, since he'd set up the guest room and everything." He paused. "I offered to get a hotel, but he said that was ridiculous." Of course he did, because Jake wasn't the one who'd be home dealing with an awkward situation with his stepfather-in-law. "I can absolutely get a hotel," Richard added quickly, reading my face. "This is strange, I know. I don't want to impose." "No, I exhaled slowly. "It's fine. You're already here. Let me just call Jake." I tried 3 times. Each call went to voicemail. Richard and I stood in uncomfortable silence in my living room. I could see he felt terrible about this situation. His hands were shoved in his pockets, and he wouldn't quite meet my eyes. "Have you eaten?" I finally asked. "No, I didn't want to presume." "Well, we should eat something." I headed toward the kitchen, Richard following hesitantly behind me. "I made lasagna last night. There's plenty." As I reheated the food, Richard sat at the kitchen counter, still looking like he wanted to disappear. I tried Jake again. Nothing. "I really am sorry about this," Richard said. "If I'd known it would be just us, I never would have come." "It's not your fault. Jake should have communicated better." I slid a plate toward him. "He does this sometimes, just assumes things will work themselves out." We ate in silence for a few minutes. It was supremely awkward. I barely knew this man, and now we were spending the evening before Thanksgiving alone together in my house. while my husband was off dealing with some mysterious emergency. How's Helen feeling? I asked, grasping for conversation. She had a migraine this morning. She gets them sometimes. They completely knock her out for days. He took a bite of lasagna. This is delicious. By the way, thanks. More silence. Then Richard set down his fork. Can I be honest with you, Emma? Something in his tone made me look up. Of course. I don't think Jake had an emergency. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? Before he left, he seemed nervous, not worried like someone whose friend is in trouble. Nervous like someone doing something they don't want to do. Richard met my eyes, and when I asked if Travis was okay, Jake got defensive. Said I wouldn't understand and that he needed to handle it alone. I felt cold. Why are you telling me this? Because you seem like a good person, and I don't like being used as a pawn in whatever this is. He leaned forward. I think Jake wanted to leave us alone together for some reason. I think this whole thing was planned. That's ridiculous. Why would he do that? Richard shrugged. I don't know. But Helen mentioned something last week about Jake asking a lot of questions about me, my schedule, my interests. She thought he was just trying to get to know me better. He paused. Now, I'm not so sure. My phone buzzed. Finally, Jake. How's it going? Richard, okay? Not are you okay? Not sorry for abandoning you. Just asking about Richard. I typed back. What's going on with Travis? The reply took 5 minutes. Long story. He's okay now. I'll be back by midnight. Make sure Richard's comfortable. Make sure Richard's comfortable. Like that was my primary concern right now. What did he say? Richard asked. I showed him the texts. He nodded slowly, like they confirmed something. Emma, I need to tell you something else. I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but I didn't want to overstep. He took a breath. About 2 weeks ago, Helen overheard Jake on the phone with someone. She only caught part of the conversation, but she heard him say something like, "It has to be Thanksgiving and Richard won't suspect anything." The lasagna turned to lead in my stomach. She heard that and didn't think to mention it to you. She did mention it to me. I brushed it off as her being paranoid. She worries about Jake sometimes. Thinks he never fully accepted me. Richard's jaw tightened. But now, sitting here in this situation, I'm wondering if she was right to be concerned. I stood up abruptly, pacing the kitchen. This doesn't make sense. What could Jake possibly want by leaving us alone? We barely know each other. I've been asking myself the same thing for the past hour. Then it hit me. Last month, Jake had been acting strange about money. He'd asked multiple times about our savings, about whether I'd noticed any unusual activity on our accounts. When I'd pressed him, he'd said he was just being cautious. That identity theft was on the rise, and 3 weeks ago, his laptop had been opened to his email. I'd only glanced at it while passing by, but I'd seen a subject line, Private Investigation Services. I'd meant to ask him about it but got distracted and forgot. Oh my God, I whispered. What? I looked at Richard. I think my husband hired a private investigator. Richard's face went pale. Why would he do that? I don't know, but that's the only explanation that makes sense. I grabbed my phone and called Jake again. This time, I didn't leave a voicemail. I texted, I know what you're doing. Call me right now or I'm leaving. 2 minutes later, my phone rang. Emma, listen. No, you listen. Why am I alone with Richard? Why did you really leave? Silence. Then, I can't explain over the phone. Try. Another pause. Travis isn't in trouble. You're right. But I did need to meet with him. He's a private investigator. My heart was pounding. Why do you have a private investigator, Jake? Because of Richard. I looked across the kitchen at Richard, who was watching me with worried eyes. What about Richard? Emma, I found something. About his past. About why he really married my mom. Jake's voice was tense. I needed Travis to verify it before I said anything. I couldn't have Richard there while I was meeting with Travis. And I couldn't tell you before I was sure. Sure about what? Richard isn't who he says he is. I felt like the ground had shifted beneath me. I looked at Richard again, this quiet, uncomfortable man sitting in my kitchen, who seemed just as confused as I was. Jake, what are you talking about? His real name isn't Richard Mitchell. It's Richard Thornton. He changed it legally 15 years ago. Jake spoke quickly now, like he'd been holding this in for too long. He had another wife before Mom. She died under suspicious circumstances. The investigation never went anywhere. But Emma, the life insurance payout was huge. $2 million. And 6 months later, he'd moved to a new state, changed his name, and started over. I stared at Richard, who had gone absolutely still. That's not possible, I said slowly. I have the documentation. Travis confirmed everything today. He found the death certificate, the insurance records, the name change filing. Jake's voice cracked. Emma, I think my mom is in danger. I think he married her for her money. She got a huge settlement when Dad died. I left you with him because Travis said we needed more proof, and the only way to get it was to see how Richard acted when he thought no one was watching. I set up cameras in the house. My blood ran cold. You did what? I'm sorry. I know how this sounds, but I had to know if he'd do something, say something, when he thought he was alone with you. Travis is reviewing the footage now. I looked at Richard. He was standing now, his face ashen. Jake, this is insane. Emma, please, just keep him there. I'm turning around. I'll be home in an hour. Travis is calling the police. He hung up. Richard and I stared at each other across my kitchen. My mind was reeling, trying to process what Jake had just told me. This man had been in my house for hours. We'd been alone together. And if Jake was right, Emma, Richard said quietly, I can explain. Oh my God, I backed toward the counter, my hand instinctively reaching for the knife block. Please, just listen. It's not what he thinks. You changed your name. Your wife died. That's not what he thinks. My wife did die. And I did get life insurance money. But it wasn't suspicious. She had cancer. Stage 4. We knew it was coming. His voice was shaking. I changed my name because after she died, I couldn't stand being the person I was with her. Everywhere I went, people knew me as the widower. I couldn't move on. So I moved away and started over. That's a pretty convenient story. It's the truth. I have medical records. I have hospice documentation. I can prove everything. He took a step forward, then stopped when he saw me tense. Emma, I'm not a murderer. I married Helen because I love her. Yes, I have money from my first wife's insurance. But I also have my own pension and savings. I don't need Helen's money. I wanted to believe him. He looked genuinely distressed, not threatening. But Jake's words kept echoing in my head. Stay where you are, I said. Okay, I'm not moving. But please, you have to believe me. Why didn't you tell Helen about your first wife? About the name change? I did tell her. Not immediately, but a few months into our relationship. She knows everything. He ran a hand through his hair. We didn't tell Jake because Helen said he was still grieving his father and wasn't ready to hear about my past marriage. We were going to tell him eventually. That actually sounded like something Helen would do, trying to protect Jake's feelings. Maybe waiting too long to share important information. If that's true, call her right now. Put her on speaker. Richard pulled out his phone with shaking hands and dialed. It rang 4 times before Helen answered, her voice groggy. Richard, is everything okay? Helen, I need you to tell Emma about my first wife. A pause. What? Why? Please, it's important. I heard rustling. Then Helen's voice became clearer. Emma, what's going on? Jake thinks Richard is dangerous. He hired a private investigator. He found out about Richard's first wife and the name change. My voice was steadier than I felt. Oh no, oh Richard, I'm so sorry. I should have told Jake months ago. Helen sounded panicked now. Emma, Richard's first wife, died of cancer. He told me everything when we started dating. He changed his name because of grief, not because he was hiding something sinister. I have copies of all the documents, the medical records, everything. I kept them in case Jake ever asked questions. Why didn't you tell Jake? Because I'm a coward. I kept thinking I would, but the right time never came. And the longer I waited, the harder it got. She was crying now. Is Jake there? Can I talk to him? He's on his way back. He thinks you're in danger. From Richard? That's absurd. Emma, I promise you, Richard is the gentlest man I've ever known. He wouldn't hurt anyone. I looked at Richard, who was wiping his eyes. He looked broken, not dangerous. Helen, I need you to send me those documents. Right now, of course. Give me 5 minutes. She hung up. Richard and I stood in silence, waiting. True to her word, 5 minutes later, my phone dinged with incoming emails. Medical records. Death certificates. Hospice bills. A legal name change form with a lawyer's statement attached, explaining that the name change was requested due to personal grief and fresh start reasoning. Everything checked out. I set my phone down, feeling sick. Jake's going to feel terrible. He was trying to protect his mother, Richard said quietly. I can't fault him for that. He left me alone with someone he thought was dangerous. He set up cameras in our house without telling me. He lied about everything. I sank into a chair. I don't know how to feel about any of this. For what it's worth, I think he loves you very much. And he loves his mother. He just went about this the wrong way. We heard a car in the driveway. Jake burst through the door moments later, wild-eyed and out of breath. Behind him was a man I assumed was Travis, looking considerably calmer. Emma, are you okay? Jake rushed to me, then stopped when he saw my expression. I'm fine. No thanks to you. He looked at Richard. Don't move. Jake, stop, I said firmly. Richard's first wife died of cancer. Helen knew everything. She has documentation. You just accused an innocent man of murder. Jake's face went through several emotions at once: confusion, disbelief, then slowly, horrified understanding. What? I showed him the emails. He read them twice, his hands trembling. Then he looked at Richard, who was still standing awkwardly by the kitchen counter. I don't understand. The investigator said. Your investigator found facts without context. I interrupted. Yes, Richard changed his name. Yes, his wife died and he got insurance money. But it was all legitimate. And Helen knew. She's known from the beginning. Travis cleared his throat. I did tell you we needed more context before drawing conclusions. Jake ignored him, still staring at Richard. You were married before? Yes. Her name was Catherine. She died 8 years ago from ovarian cancer. Richard's voice was steady now. I should have told you myself. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. Mom knew. She's known for years. She was waiting for the right time to tell you. Richard took a step forward. Jake, I understand why you were suspicious. If I'd found that information about someone my mother was marrying, I'd have questions too. But I promise you, I love Helen. I would never hurt her. Jake looked like he might be sick. He turned to me. Emma, I'm so sorry. I thought I was protecting everyone. I thought. You thought, instead of trusting your mother, you'd set up cameras in our house and leave me alone with someone you believed was dangerous. My anger was finally catching up with my fear. Do you understand how messed up that is? I know it was wrong. I panicked. When I found that information, I couldn't think straight. He reached for my hand, but I pulled away. You need to leave, I said quietly. What? I need space. I need to think. Take Travis and go to a hotel for the night. Emma, please. Jake, go. He looked at Richard, then back at me. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Apologize to Richard. And call your mother. Jake turned to Richard, tears in his eyes. I'm sorry. I should have talked to you. I should have trusted my mom. I lost my dad, and the thought of losing her too. Or finding out someone was using her. I understand, Richard said, and surprisingly, he sounded like he meant it. But next time, ask questions before you jump to conclusions. Jake nodded miserably, then left with Travis. Richard and I were alone again. Well, he said after a moment, this has been the strangest Thanksgiving of my life. Despite everything, I laughed. It was either that or cry. I'm sorry you got dragged into this mess. Not your fault. He checked his watch. I should probably go to get a hotel. Don't be ridiculous. It's late, and you didn't do anything wrong. The guest room is ready. I stood up. Besides, we already ruined Thanksgiving Eve. Might as well salvage Thanksgiving Day. Are you sure? Positive. Though I have to warn you, I'm making that turkey whether Jake comes back or not. Richard smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him all night. I make an excellent stuffing. If you'll accept my help, deal. Jake came home the next morning, sheepish and apologetic. He spent an hour on the phone with Helen, apologizing profusely. Then he apologized to Richard again, and to me several more times. We made Thanksgiving dinner together, all four of us, including Travis, who Jake insisted should stay since he'd driven all that way. It was awkward at first, but by the time we sat down to eat, something had shifted. Jake and Richard actually talked, really talked, for the first time. As I watched my husband listen to his stepfather's stories about his late wife, about his grief, about finding love again with Helen, I saw something in Jake's face soften. Maybe this disaster of a holiday had been necessary after all. That night, after everyone had left or gone to bed, Jake held me close. I'm sorry I didn't trust you to handle the situation. I'm sorry I made you feel unsafe in our own home. You need to learn to communicate instead of making unilateral decisions, I said. We're partners. Act like it. I will, I promise. He kissed my forehead. Though I think we should go back to having Thanksgiving at Mom's house next year. I laughed. Agreed. Sometimes the worst holidays teach you the most important lessons. That Thanksgiving taught us about trust, communication, and the danger of assumptions. And surprisingly, it gave Jake a real relationship with his stepfather. Though I made Jake remove every single camera from our house. That was non-negotiable.